Well guys, welcome to another episode of GJ's Guitars. Drive pedals, oh my God. There's a new one every week. It even seems sometimes there's a new drive pedal hourly. And well, I guess we're all guilty of getting enthralled in the next drive pedal, especially these boutique ones that seem to cost north of 250 quid. Obviously, I am a slight sucker for a drive pedal. I thought today I would show you a few of the ones that I have gone through trying to find what I'm looking for with a drive pedal. Sometimes you got to buy these things to work out what you want and what you don't want. So anyway, let's get into it. Right, drive pedals, my goodness. Well, I guess the journey started for me back in '96 when I got one of these things. A Klon, oh my goodness, probably the best investment I ever made in a drive pedal. When you look and you discuss pedals and bits and bobs, it sort of seems to have gone round in a big cycle. We used to use, heads and cabs, and then we went on to, combos. No one wanted heads and cabs. Now it's sort of gone back to heads and cabs. So everything's sort of always, in music, it goes round in a circle all the time of what's sort of in favour or what you wanted. I mean, back in the day, I was talking to my pal Roger about it the other week, and he was like, well, back then we just didn't use pedals. We just didn't use them. We used amps. And now what you're trying to do is to create some kind of gain stage, I feel, at a lower volume. So, you can get those kind of classic tones, but obviously a volume where people find that acceptable. Back in the day, you used to just crank amps up loud, get natural drive, but obviously they were loud, So that's maybe not so much of a thing these days. I know people are a bit conscious about that. What, in essence, does a drive pedal do? Okay, so basically what you've got is a signal going in to your pedal, and it's coming out of there and it's going to an amp. And then with these controls, you can either make it quieter or louder, and you can make it gainier or more distorted. So it depends what you do. And then you've got a kind of unit, often, you'll have a tone knob. So most drive pedal these days come with 3 controls. So basically you've got your gain stage, your volume stage, and some kind of tone, which is, the 3 things mixed really: bass, treble, and your mid frequency, and they're in the middle, okay? And that's how they work. So most important bit, what do they sound like? So let's have a bit of a listen. So first of all, we'll try the broadcaster pedal. So here's my clean sound. So first bit of gain. Okay, now we're going to put on the fuzz saw side of it. Pretty cool. Okay, so now we'll just move over to the dinosaural. So drive on first. Then we'll boost that for the solo. And then we'll keep the drive on and we'll do the push. And then let's just try all of the above. Okay, and then let's try just the push. just the solo. pretty good. And then protein one, so tube screen we run on the end. Now, that's basically, oh, let's try the Odin. Let's give that. So this pedal, the drive side of it is absolutely brilliant. So this is the drive side. Thing's a mighty beast. What I've done is I am now totally in love with my Quad Cortex, which I've been using tons. It's brilliant. So what I decided to do with that, just as a basic setup, is I have captured my amplified Nation amp, and I've captured it in several different settings. So I've kind of got a clean, I've got a clean boost, I've got the FET clean, and then I've got the FET boost. So I've captured it in a few different positions, and I put a clean boost on the top if I just want to boost any of those settings, okay? And then what I've done with my pedal board is I've actually split the modulation, and that goes into the effects loop, which I think is a must if you're using delays and stuff. And then I've put the drive all in the front. So basically think of the Quad Cortex as a multiple amp option, okay? And then what we've done for the purposes of today is we've just taken a DI out, so we're recording it, you know, like it's going into a PA desk. So I have actually used this setup live. The other week I did a gig where we had no amps on stage. So this is how I used it. I wanted to use the kind of my own pedal board just for a bit of familiarity. And I like the tones on it, even though I've kind of captured those into the Quad Cortex. But for a more visual thing on stage, I wanted to use this, okay? Sometimes buying a new pedal can push you off in a direction, you know, to redirect your music or a tone or something you might have heard. And these things, like I said earlier on in the video, they seem to come out every hour. There's a new one and there's a new company and there's just loads of them. The big thing is they seem to have gone after this kind of boutique kind of pedal thing where all the boxes seem to be quite fancy and they put a number on, which personally I quite like. It's almost like you're collecting something, which you probably shouldn't do, even though I do seem to have a studio full of things. But what I try and consider is what I'm looking for to how that's going to react with my amplifier. So some amps these days go all out, they've put drive pedals in them, but what you need to consider is what's happening with the amplifier and how that's working to get the most out of some drive pedal you're going to buy. Because my amp, for instance, is basically a clean amp. It doesn't have a drive channel on it. So they say it's very pedal friendly. What they're really doing is you've got an amp, and what you don't want, or maybe you do want, a pedal can colour it in a way that you may or may not want. Now, the interesting thing with a clon is, you know, and there's been loads of videos on endless clones and copies of them, but what that used to do is, I think it used to enhance your sound into the amp. So even if just plugging in and not even having it on changes the colour and changes the dynamic of the amp, which may be something you're after or not. You know, when I'm gigging with my friend Roger, he just plugs his guitar straight into his amp. He doesn't want pedals at all. And you know, you could argue, you know, his sound or what he's looking at, that's what he wants to play. He wants to get everything from the guitar. He doesn't want anything interfering with what's going through his, you know, from his guitar to his amp. With me, on the other hand, I tend to use them more as a texture or a different dynamic for a song. So if I'm playing a song and I might want that kind of drive, or I might want that kind of drive, and I've been really experimenting with my pedal board and the sort of drive I want. I don't have the same drive for every song that I play, especially in the country band. I do use different ones for different songs, which does really work in terms of a dynamic within the unit. So I just thought I'd mention this, which is a kind of thing. It's not my kind of thing, but it is a thing. Some people these days like to stack pedals. I don't really know what that means, but you can combine things, which does do a tone. I've done it a bit amply before. There was a time when I went through a sort of stage of using 2 amplifiers and using an ABY switch, and I could either blend them or have them sort of EQ'd to do different things. I did do that a few years ago, then I just, I just don't do that anymore. So pedal stacking is a thing. So you can combine, obviously, pedals on together. Personally, I'm not so keen on that. If you don't set them up quite right, you can compress your tone a lot, which you want to watch out for. But some people do it. Obviously, I'd always say make sure that you don't hit one and it really lifts another one. You want to make sure that your gain stages are balanced. Another thing I just sort of point out, and how I tend to use them, is I like to have it so everything's just clipping a little bit. So I don't want major, I mean, obviously it depends what you're playing, it depends what you're going for. But how I tend to have things is I don't have loads of gain on my, on my pedals. I don't have loads of distortion, because you have to watch sometimes if you're playing with a band, it can just sound like a bumblebee's going off in your amp. That's not for me. I've played with players that played with loads of distortion. It might sound great when the amp is 3mm from your feet, but out the front, you won't hear what's being played. It's not a good thing to do. So, I would urge away from that. So drive pedals. Well, there is that pedal show. In fact, it is called that. I've watched their channel quite a few times. Pretty cool. And they're always talking about, obviously, pedals. That's why they call it the pedal show. What happens with drive pedals, you end up just buying them anyway, and then you go for a thing, or you've heard something on YouTube. Sometimes it's a bit disappointing. I've certainly done that. I've bought a pedal and it's not really done what I thought it was going to do, and I've watched the video and it's, obviously whatever trickery they've done in the background has made a difference to what it sounds like. So that can be a thing. I mean, the thing with drive pedals that's quite good is really it's teaching you to work out a gain stage. So obviously how much distortion you want versus how much level. You could have loads of level and no gain, depending on how you want that to react with your amp. I like the fact that, they've always 9 times out of 10 got 3 knobs to turn, so you got your levels and then you've got a tone on it. That's quite good. Some of them come with a clipping switch, which will just be affecting mids and that kind of thing. Some of them don't. So they're just cool things. A lot of them come in nice fancy boxes and come in a nice bag. That's quite a nice collectible thing for a guitar player, I guess. And obviously a lot of the time they've all got resale value. I mean, to be honest, the only one that I bought new was the Odin. The rest of these pedals on my board, exception with the Klon, and the Amplified Nation, were all used. If you are looking to get yourself a bit of a bargain, sometimes you can find them on Reverb. That's certainly where I found all mine. So it's always worth having a look on there. And usually someone's bought one, they'll take a bit of a hit on it, or they've done some trade or something, so it's a good place to look out for secondhand things. So you can, experiment, and chances are, if you want to resell them, you can put them back on basically for what you pay for them and maybe lose a little bit of money. But these are all kind of boutique ones, or they're all a bit, with the exception for the Protein and the Odin, they're pretty much mainstream. They are a few quid, but I mean, they're great pedals. The thing that's always fascinates me is sometimes you pick them up and they're a bit heavy, and sometimes you pick them up and they're really light. So, I suppose that's down to the chassis. I mean, this one, I picked this one up, it's ever so light, but, it's really nicely finished and made. I'm sure that's actually going on another, so I'm actually in the process of building another rig at the moment, and that's going to go on that. So anyway, there you go. Thanks for tuning in, folks. If anybody has got any questions or would like any further demos on a pedal or wants to discuss it, please get in touch. And thanks very much for tuning in. We'll catch you real soon. So that's basically drive pedals.